with the discussion of buffers. First and foremost, again, I'm going to start with things that I get questions, I get bug reports. For those, I'll go ahead and start this up again. For those of you just joining us, my name is Deuce. Everyone calls me Deuce. I am the beta team lead and the customer service lead for LightWave 3D. What that means is that I deal with key accounts, I deal with key resellers, I deal with the engineers, I deal with end users, I deal with customer service reports, technical supports, bug reports, vetting, builds, testing, quality assurance. I deal with I sit in the vortex chair, basically. I am the center of the spinning everything. And what I'm just going to start off with here with my discussion of buffers. Again, we're using 2018.0.1 and trying to get people who are at least familiar with LightWave kind of caught up on some of the new things, and helping those new people find the things that they're might be missing. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to start off with one of the things here under Ritter Properties. This is where we set up all of our stuff for buffers and the like. And I want to tell you that this is a common bug report, customer support question, and that is, it starts off and people are saying, all of this down here on the bottom of where I can set up and set where things are saved is ghosted, and I can't change it. It's really simple. It'll be in that condition if you haven't told it that you want to save it. I know it's just one of those things that the few people who I have run into this with have, felt a little silly at the end. But if you haven't checked the I want to save it in the saved column, this down here will be ghosted, and you won't be able to change anything. So, excuse me. Just want to do a first blush, click on the save, and then you can change all of your settings. A nice thing about this too is that if you multi-select to make your change here, it will affect all that you have selected, so you don't have to do each independent one. Multi-select aware is the way to go. Now, excuse me, what I'm going to just kind of briefly show here, let me close this, is one powerful aspect of this is that we can actually, we're looking at a VPR render right now. And this is the VPR render of the final. This is the final render. Opening this up gives me all the choices and all the different things for all the buffers that I have. Excuse me 1 minute while I cough. I sure hope I muted for that. So, as I scroll down through here, this is the final render, so this is the beauty pass. Then I can choose to view my alpha. I can choose to view my backdrop. Well, my backdrop is black, so it's kind of dull. This is my camera tangent. This is my coverage buffer. You give it a little bit of a time there, and it'll finally draw it in. Here's my depth buffer. And my, let's see, we're not dealing with edges. There's no cell shading here, so there's no edges there. Here's my geometry. I come down here, here's my normals. Here's my object ID. Well, there's just one object, so it's just one ID. Scroll down through here, here's my surface ID, so here's all my different surfaces. So you can see here that I can easily flip through and see which particular buffers that I might want to pay attention to. And you have to understand, or you have to bear in mind that what is it that you are wanting to do when you're working with the buffers. A lot of people seem to have misnomers or different ideas about what working with buffers can do, and it's it can be an art just like working with anything else. And you kind of have to have an idea when you're going through here of what you might want to have. And granted, the benefit here of being able to come into the render properties, into the buffers tab here, buffers channel, and saying, hey, let's just save everything. Let's just come over here and let's just make sure that everything's saved and we have everything that we want. But it's one of those things that, you know, you might not actually need it for a particular need. Like, for example, I'm actually rendering this particular setup has to work out, you know, a saving for transparency. This doesn't really have anything transparent. I bet you if I come down here and I look at the transparency channel, yeah, I'm just basically looking at what looks like an alpha channel. So I don't really need to save that. I guess that's one, you know, positive thing about being able to use VPR to kind of proof what buffers actually might have something in them. And as an exploration here, this particular thing, let me, just so I'm not looking at black and white, I'm looking at something a little more pretty. I'm going to bring up Fusion here. And this is, let me see, did that just totally, no, that's good still. That's enough. So what I'm just going to do is, this is my final render. This is my final render pass right here. If I drag this up, that's looking at my final render. And granted, it's it just so happens, let me just copy this and paste it somewhere else so that I can take it and bring in, make it alpha solid. So there it is against black. So down here, I have done what everyone would kind of talk about being a you know, pass to beauty. So if I throw this into this other area, let me just do fit and fit. Excuse me, this is my diffuse direct, this is my diffuse indirect, my specular direct, my specular indirect. So each one of these is essentially set to normal and with a 1.0 burn in. If you look across here and just scrub or just kind of click on each of these are all doing the same. So diffuse over the background gives you that. Add the indirect, add the specular direct, and add the specular indirect. And if this is the final, this was the beauty render, this was the everything is together, and this is the one that I just built up. If I take this and say that's the beauty, no difference. Here's my output here. If I slide this back and forth, you know, there's no difference. So this is, you know, what everyone talks about, I suppose, when they talk about I'm going to take and I'm going to build back to beauty. But in one sense of the word, I don't really, I mean, why do this? I mean, this is me. You know, this is just me here. You know, everyone else might have a different viewpoint or a different thought on this. But because of what I'm actually working with here, let me swap these. Let me put my final over there, and let me put this up here. If I was to take like my specular direct here, and I think if I hold up my shift, I can just drop this right in there. So I'm changing now the specular. So as I roll my wheel around, what I'm doing is I'm modifying this particular, you know, layer, as it were, this particular node. And as you can see, I'm changing everything that is the specular, that is that that specular direct. Morgan just asked a question. Thanks for coming in, Ezra. Can you add this one? Absolutely, Morgan. I'll see if you can definitely get me if you say there's already as an open feature request, get me that number. I'll make sure that it gets done. So one of the things here is that, like I'm saying here, I'm modifying the specular, and as you can see, all the specular that's in that particular channel is being modified. To me, that's not all that useful, but what would be is, for example, here's my final render. I threw it back over there now. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take it over here, and what I'm doing here is I'm taking my surface ID. So if I go back to LightWave here for a second and go to my surface ID, so if I find my surface ID, surface, right here, as you can see, I've got a different value for each of my shared surfaces. If I come back into Fusion, there we go, Fusion, it all looks white. Well, okay, it all looks white, but it's really not. This is done in such a way so that it makes sense to a user, it makes sense to a human. This is what we lovingly refer to as clown colors. But what this is just showing you is yes, I have a value, and matching colors matches the value. So back over here in Fusion, by taking this surface ID into a channel Boolean, and what I'm doing is I'm copying the red, green, and blue from the background into the red, green, and blue here, feeding that into a bitmap so that I can pull just the red channel, and then dropping it into a color corrector. What I can do here is this color corrector, if I take it, so my original color is yellow. So if I take it over here, excuse me, to red, and do this pick, I can actually pick in here and I can find each of the different surfaces, the surface IDs, so that I can modify those colors. Disco matte, I like it. I don't know, clown color I kind of like too, but anyway, disco matte, clown color, those both work. So this again is absolutely Morgan, and and again, make sure Morgan that you get me that number so that I can make sure that the docs do get picked up with that. Just want to make sure that that doesn't get lost, because I don't have this Twitch chat to be able to refer back to, so make sure that you get me that number. So, excuse me, this kind of basically in a nutshell does or communicates what I was wanting to talk about with buffers and the thing, was being able to see it here in digital in the VPR, so that you can make sure of which ones you want to do. And additionally, you know, in Fusion or in any other compositing app, I want you to make sure that you understand that just by rendering all these buffers and having access to all these buffers, if you don't have an idea of what your end result is, what your control that you're after is, you might be just doing extra work that you really aren't needing to do. Is there any other oh, Ken, great, thanks for grabbing that issue ID. We'll make sure to get that in there. Kelly, absolutely. It's one of those things too that, you know, with all of that, you know, you just need to make sure that you're not doing additional work and rendering additional buffers that you don't really need. I see too many people who think just by the sheer mention of, hey, I'm going to work in buffers, that somehow this is going to make things just magically easier. You have to still have an idea. You still have to have a a process of what is it at the end result that you want to have. So just kind of throwing that out there. Before I move forward, any other inputs on this? Any other questions? I know that one of the things that tends to trip people up. Let me just do this. Let me think about what I could quickly set up here. Let me clear scene, and I'm just going to throw in a cube, and I'm just going to clone this cube. I'll go to the camera view, take this off center, clone him, and I clone the camera instead. So let's grab the cube, clone, bring that down, clone, bring this down, clone, bring this down. One of the things that I get asked quite often in bug reports and such is that I get told that the depth buffer isn't working. So here I've set up a scene, I've turned on my depth buffer, and it's just white. This is not a bug. Normally, it's one of those things that a depth buffer is going to be floating point. So this white might look white, but it really has all kinds of information in it. You can click on normalize display so that it makes it a little bit more human readable. And at the same time, it's one of those things that if you go to the buffer itself, depth, that you can see here down at the bottom, my near is 0 feet and my far is 621 miles. So if I pull this back, now you can start kind of getting what most people are expecting a depth buffer to look like, so that black is close, there we go, and white is in the distance. So there I'm at about, I'll go ahead and type it in, 100 feet. So there's a normalize, and again, if I turn off normalize, we're not going to have, it's not going to be that human readable depth. So again, normalizing your VPR display can help you see it and visualize it, and again, making sure that you have the actual depth set, because there's no background here. There's not necessarily a background, but there's no geometry that fills up the entire view. So infinity is basically where this is going to. So just remember those two values. I want to win LightWave 2018. Oops, I missed. Can I win next version? So before I move forward, anything else? And absolutely, Kelly, I'm looking forward to your Fusion stuff. I would definitely love to look into that. I'd love to look into that myself. I'm always looking for those little tips and things of Fusion that I myself even don't use. I know that I don't use Fusion, but 15% to its potential. I barely scratch what you can totally do with it. Greetings from France. Hey, I just noticed we're up to 41 viewers on this. Oh, excellent, Kelly. Thank you. Okay, without further ado, there's some French for you, Kaylin. Kale? No, it's kale. Kale menudo. Okay, kale. We're going to, Kelly, you want me to talk about some custom buffers? So basically, custom buffers, if we come up into here, we've got our regular buffers, our standard buffers, then down here we have extra buffers. And then we can create even, more. We can say create custom buffer or even a custom light group. So with creating a custom buffer, we can add, new buffer name. We can, choose our things here, and now this exists in several other places. Excuse me. So if I will be straight up with you. I haven't done a whole lot myself with this. Everything I've always been able to do with just the regular buffers itself. So I am not 100% sure on how to add things into the custom buffers. The light groups are a little bit different because you can actually group the lights so that you can have. But the trick with lights is if you pull them into their own buffer, they go away from the master buffer. So you have to make sure that all of the lights are taken into account, because it can't. A single light cannot be in two different at once. I wasn't, prepared to show any of the custom buffer stuff here, Kelly. So it's one of those things that when I come back, if I'm invited back, if no one else has done this, I'll certainly have this as a potential for another time, and I'll make sure to have it a little bit more under my belt. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go ahead and jump next into UV and UDIM mapping. Again, it's one of those, yes, Kelly, we'll figure it out. We'll get there. One of those things that, again, from my customer service and technical support is that a lot of people, they will tell me, gosh, I read through the manual and I don't even know how to UV a box. So I thought that what we might do here is just kind of look at the different ways that we have natively to UV, and then we can certainly look at, and one of the things that I want to do is to show you UDIM mapping. So just as kind of a refresher, or certainly for people who are old-time, LightWave users, this shouldn't be too much of a surprise. If I open up my vertex maps here, so we're dealing with texture mapping. So I can come under my map and I can say new UV map. I can give it a name and I can give it an initial value. So if I do planar, this cube will just be flattened, along one axis. So this front on is the Z. So if I say this and I say create, I've just got one that is flat. And honestly, this isn't all that useful. One thing too, not a lot of people I've come to understand know this, but if you select and hit the shift underscore, that is how you clear something from a texture. So I still, now that it's cleared, it now goes away. So that's a way to remove things. So cylindrical for a box is kind of silly. So is spherical, but it kind of gives an interesting thing. So here's the 4. This is a spherical. And if you lasso select this top, that's this side. So I mean, again, this is not all that useful. So again, shift underscore to clear. For this, we might want to look at doing an atlas map. As we hit create, these are our 6 sides here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And additionally, excuse me, it's one of those things that, Atlas is kind of a fire and forget, and then you have to kind of manipulate as you go. We have another method, and that is to use the ABF unwrap. So what I'm doing here is I'm selecting edges And I'm visualizing if I were to say, take a knife and cut this box in different places. So if I do the ABF unwrap, I can now unwrap it like this. So these are different ways of initially UV unwrapping. There's many and assorted other ways of doing it as well. There's even tricks and techniques of using morphs to do it. So you create the UV on the morph, and then you relax the morph, and then you have that. There's a lot of different techniques and ways to do the initial UV. One of the things that let's see if I take that, so that's gone away, and let me just go ahead and delete the box. If I create a texture map and then create the box, so I've already got the map is made, and then make UVs, so it will make it as I create it. Myself, it's one of those things, even though it was initially set up as Atlas, it came in looking what might be described as cylindrical or spherical. I've just always found it best to start off with maybe Atlas, or if it's an organic shape, that I might do the ABF unwrap, and then position things as I see fit. I will tell you that you are doing yourself a disservice if you haven't gone to the LightWave page and downloaded the PLG UV tools. They're free. You can get them from the plugins down at the bottom. It's the best addition that you can do that's free to add to your toolkit for dealing with UV maps. I highly suggest you doing it. They're, like I say, they're free. Get them and use them. Now, there you go. Perfect. Thanks for that, Ken. There's the link to the PLG tools. So, yeah, I don't think I've actually got them set up in this particular build. But anyway, so all of that being said, and as I expected, or as I hoped, most people, at least understand that aspect of UV mapping. What I want to do is I want to talk about UDIM. If I load up this is actually comes with the this comes in the manual, this little sugar cube guy, and I pop open his UV texture and loses UV texture. So here is this is the UDIM layout. If I lay over his color, there are the different excuse me, the different tiles. Now UDIM is a little bit, it's a different way of thinking, and it's a different way of working. I, in preparation for this, tried to find and to see what all does actually support this, and it wasn't exactly clear to me, but it seemed that Unreal and Unity do support them. But it seems like, I don't know, that maybe it's like in its start for supporting these. I don't know. I couldn't get quite the clear cut on that. But I know that Maya and I know that several other programs do support the UDIM. One thing is, why do I want to, what is the big deal? Why UDIM? What makes it so special? What makes it special is that for each tile, I can have actually a different resolution image map. And the thing is that this gives me the ability within one UV texture to have a higher resolution image map on given pieces and given sections of my model than I would be able to if it was all packed into one square in single tile. So what this allows me to not have to worry about everything being packed into one tile and trying to cover it with only a 4K or an 8K image. I can actually break these out into different tiles and have certain pieces, maybe a low 2K image, and the special details that I really need to have high, put an 8K image on those. So this is especially helpful for things like organics, so that you can have a high resolution texture on the eyes, for example, and a comparatively lower on, say, the face or anything else, or maybe aspects. So it's easy to mix and match, and it's easier to put the detail where you want to have it. So one of the things that I wanted to show here is I have a, let me quit, actually, I didn't necessarily want to quit. I hope this doesn't really honk everything. If I pause or drop the stream, I'll be right back. Okay, I didn't. Good. What I have here is I've got an object that I did, and this is a little robot and a little game type thing. And what I have is I've got 3 texture maps, primarily because of some needs. And you can see here, this is the texture. So this is a pack texture. This is just for my treads, and if you can see, it's a looping thing. And I've got my wheels as a completely separate. So what I wanted to try to do is I wanted to see what does it take to take this that has 3 texture maps now and create UDIMs out of it. So what I have is these are my my 3 texture maps. So really simply, what I'm just going to do is I'm just going to I'll copy this first one, and what I'm just going to call this is UDIM, and I'm going to go _1001 and copy that name. It doesn't matter necessarily. I haven't found that it matters here that it's an underscore or a space or anything. So I'm going to copy and paste this and rename this, paste, let's see, UDIM _1002. And again, the wheels, copy paste, and I'm just going to rename this to UDIM 103. So back in LightWave, I'm going to take my image editor and I'm going to load this particular sequence here. So I'm looking for my 001, and I just tell it, because it's got the 1001, it automatically will allow me to choose a UDIM image type, and you see it's already stacked it here. And yes, Kelly, correct. From what I have seen so far, image format doesn't matter. I've done it with PNGs. I've done it with JPEGs and Targas. I don't know about Unity with UDIM. Like I say, I tried to do some research on it, and everywhere I found it was like, well, you got to do something, or you don't, but it looked like it was old information. So you'd really need to check and see about, you know, support. So back into here, I'm going to take this and I'm going to now show my UDIM sequence. So there's my 3. So all I'm just going to do here is I'm going to take my treads. I'm going to select all of them. And I'm going to come down here and move this over. Line that up. I'm going to take my wheels. Again, select all of them. Move it over like that. And now I still have 3 separate ones. So my base is texture. So I'm going to say this, copy vertex map to texture. Take this, copy vertex map to texture. And so now if I look at texture, it's got all 3 of them. So I can delete that one and delete that one. And in my surface editor, instead of T button here, I'll say the UDIM, copy, paste, and paste. And so now it looks exactly the same, except now it's using a UDIM. So it's one of those things I found it to be quite easy to move something that used to be standard into UDIM. And I hope that, you know, again, I want to make mention that this is the first iteration of UDIM. There are certain things, again, we've gotten a lot of feature requests and things to make it a little bit more robust. But I hope that you can see here that for an initial entry into this seemed to be quite painless, honestly, to move from a standard to a UDIM texture solution. All I really had to do was just make sure to name them correctly, which is starting with the one, you know, make it sure it's 1001 for the start, and just keep it named the same as you move forward. So I hope that someone finds that useful. I was quite pleased with it. It's one of those things that my end use actually has to still stay with the broken out, because the end use is a different thing, and they actually need to have the controls. Morgan, occasionally, but what I've found is you can just select those and clear them, and it doesn't hurt anything with the map, and it's fairly easy to clean up. Oh, that's right. It's more than LightWave 18. So let's see if I win. So I'm going to move forward here. Does anyone else have any questions on this as far as the actual dealing with and making UVs, UDIM, or anything in Modeler? There's not a whole lot to it. There was just that one thing of the naming correctly, and the copy into, you know, copying into the texture to get it all flattened into just one texture map. The video will be posted, absolutely. Steve, yes, that's actually one of the numbered tiles. That is actually one of the most requested to have, so that we can know where those are. Absolutely. I know that it's been looked into already to being so that you can see where the tiles are. And Kelly, good point on the whole copy. We'll see what we can do on that, definitely, to make sure, especially because of UDIM. Snow Leopard, convert a lot of old LightWave assets to Unity. Any way to bake multiple surfaces with standard projections into a single UV? I actually have a scene that I have set up that does that very thing. That was the way these images were created. And, you know, I did it, again, I did it all into single UVs. I could, it might take me a little bit, but, you know, to find the scene. But as Kelly points out, there are some tools that you can get. PB Baker is one. Yes, David, the way I did it was I created my own UV map and used the surface baking camp. Again, there's many variations and many ways to do the same thing. I'm going to go ahead and do the last thing that I had that was somewhat planned. This is one of those things that I do occasionally when I'm asked to talk at different places, because it is one of those things that new users and old users alike don't quite, maybe they don't 100% understand it. Maybe they do, maybe they don't. And I just want to talk over spline patch modeling. So what I'm just going to do here is I'm just going to do a fast little setup. And I'm just doing this so that I can get points, because when I hit K to kill these, I don't need that center. And just what I'm going to do is I'm just going to create 4 splines, Control P, select points and Control P, here, Control P, here, and Control P. I now have a spline box that I can use for spline patching. And there's some things that not everyone grasps, and I hope I can make it easy. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to select these in an order. I do it this way: Control P. I'm sorry, not Control P. Control F, and I get a choice here to make a spline patch: perpendicular and parallel, lengths and knots. So if I say OK, it creates my patch. Now, I did it this order. If I do it this order, Control F, they'll face the right way. So it's counterclock for it to face, you know, upwards. If I go to texture, right, let me turn off the grid. Let me turn that off and turn that off so it's a little easier to see here. There we go. So I'm going to come around, Control F, 10 and 10, and I'm going to do it on lengths. So right now this makes an absolutely perfect grid. Perfectly square, perfectly set up. Now, I did it on lengths. So one of the things I want to do is I'm going to grab these points here and slide them all the way over. So I'll now select the splines in the same direction, Control F, and again leave it the same setting. And, you know, and of course, because it's LightWave, it inverts it. But it's okay. You can always, you know, invert your selection and hit F for flipping. It doesn't matter. But as you can see, nothing changed. There's not anything has changed because of where those points are. So now if I do the same thing and say Control F and choose knots, Well, now it has squished the ones here over close because it's going off of where these points are located, so it's paying attention to where they are. That's knots. With length, it doesn't care where the points are. It's just going to go on the overall length of the spline. So what this means is that you can actually get some pretty interesting things. So if I pull this all the way over here, pull this one up, and pull this one down, when I do this again and leave it on knots, now it's doing it this way. So there's some control here that not a lot of people totally get initially. Now, the thing to understand, let me go ahead and reset those points back. Here we go. Is you pay attention to the last spline you selected. So that was this one. If I do length again, so if I say perpendicular 5 and parallel 10, you can see that parallel to the last one I selected, I get 10 divisions. Perpendicular to the last one I had selected, I get 5. So that helps you know which way your patching goes. Now, going back to the knots thing, I've been doing everything here 2D. If I pull these up and F, go on knots, let's go back to 10. And there we just invert and flip. So now we're starting to pull in and do some three-dimensional. Again, if I pull these off axis or pull these to a twist, here, here, and here, and pull them upward. Control F, knots. And again, I need to flip. So as you can see, I can easily create some very complex shapes. And again, all of these are quads, so they're quite easily and readily subdivided. So I can hit tab and create a smooth surface from that. Now that's dealing with 4. If I take this back down and let's take just 3 to another layer here and weld these together, pull this over and do the same kind of thing. Again, paying attention to the last one I selected. Let's just go on length. The last one selected, let me flip that. Because this was the last one I had selected, this is where my triangles are created. So again, you pay attention to where, to the last one that you had, that determines where the corner becomes. So I mean, if I select it here, then the corner will be created in that one, right like that. Flip. And again, length and knots still do the same control. Now, this is not to say that I can't do 100% freeform. So if I take my sketch tool and sketch something here, and then something there, all I need to do is to make sure that these things cross properly. And when they, meaning cross properly, the corners have to be welded. These things have to be connected. So if I connect those, I'm just using Control W for weld, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, Shift F. Pay attention to links or knots. You know, I can still spline patch that area. If I add, so let's do 20 and 20, say, then I can get, again, a more detailed or a higher resolution mesh inside of this. One thing that a lot of people don't think about is that this can actually help with fixing models. So what I'm going to do here is I'm just going to randomly select some points here and pull this up so that I have a very unique shape here, and I'll do length, that's fine. And let's invert and flip and hit tab. So this is a unique shape, but say that there was some problems. Say that there was something in an area that had either bad polys, triple polys, had a hole, had something. So if these were missing and I wanted to recreate or to make new here, all I would need to do is I'm just going to come along here and do Control P and come up this way, Control P, come across this way, Control P, and down, Control P. Hit F, and again, now I need to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 2, 3, 4, so accidentally I did 5 and 5, and let's do it on length, and they're not welded, so I can just select connected and flip, and bring up my statistics panel, and find all my curves and get rid of them. I now can pretty closely weld some points here and get this thing patched back in. And it's a heck of a lot faster than trying to break it across, you know, to try to do a repair by hand. You can certainly use those splines to help get you going. Does all this make sense? You know, people, now we're at 50 online. Are there any questions about this concept or anything? Have any of you guys used spline patching in this way? As I try to compete against the drawing for a copy of LightWave. Can you stretch a patch over? Stretch a patch. Stretch a patch over splines. That's kind of what you're doing when you're creating them. So you know that's kind of like what you're doing. Like the soap bubble effect. I mean, in one sense of the word, that's what is happening when you do the patch itself. It is kind of like the soap bubble. You know, you're talking about the tension, maybe. You know, it's going to interpret between them. You just have to kind of play with it and see if it's doing actually what you want. Anything else might be a different tool. I'm not really sure. Fill polygon hole. There's the tool fix. Hang on, let me find it. I'm not remembering what the name of it is. There's too many tools to remember. There is a fixing tool that will patch holes, that will find discontinuous things. I just don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. Let's see. Used spline patch a long time ago. Nice catch up again. Let's see. So we are. It's one of those things here that it's we're at 248. Steve, it's one of those things that, as you well know, I have an appointment that I need to catch up on, and I think I'm ready to turn the reins back over to you, bud. I hope you're hearing me. I know that LWCAD does have affixed holes, but I'm almost certain that the one that we use to fix STL for 3D printing, I think it has a simple one too as well. Okay, I'm going to stop